All right, what's up, guys? Jackson Ape here today, and today we're going to talk about my 4 keys to almost guaranteed results. I don't want to say anything is guaranteed because there's a lot of intangibles and factors that go into pursuing goals and achieving different things that we're after in life, right? Um, but if we can check these 4 boxes every single day of the week, and we can do that for weeks and months at a time and compound that over years and years, I kind of want to say that you're going to have some guaranteed results that you're going to be really proud of. Now, it's a lot easier said than done, but truthfully, these things are all simple in practice. But they're not so easy to execute and carry out on a week to week, month to month, year to year basis. But like I said, if you can, these are going to compound over time, and you will almost have guaranteed results at the end of this if you can stay on track with this over a long enough period of time. So first and foremost, you need to be training hard, and I don't mean casually going in, doing 3 sets of 10 with the same weight that you did last week, maybe trying to push for 1 extra rep. I'm talking about you're training hard. You're in there sweating, you're breathing heavy, you're constantly trying to progress in the weight that you are using, whether that be your form, how many reps you can do with the same weight, doing more sets, less time in between sets, etc., etc. That is where this progressive overload comes into play. When we want to think of pushing ourselves in the gym, we don't want to stay with the same weights or the same intensities, that we were using months or years ago, and we want to be progressing. And so we need to be training hard for a minimum of 3 times per week, roughly 45 to 60 minutes. Obviously, more is not always better, but more can be better in this sense. And I would recommend implementing conditioning on each of your training days as well. This can be a low intensity, kind of steady state kind of day where maybe you go for a ruck or you're on an incline treadmill walk. Something of that nature where it's just cyclical. You're repeating the same thing, for a certain amount of time. And you do a high intensity kind of day where you're either doing intervals or you're doing circuit training, things of that nature. You could also just try to get done with your workout a little bit faster on one of the days. Just say, all right, on week 1, I'm going to try to get this done in 60 minutes. On week 2, I'm going to try to get this done in 50 minutes. And in week 3, I'm going to try to get it done in between 42 and 45 minutes. Something of that nature just shows that you're on the right track to making progress. You're elevating the heart rate. You're getting yourself in a position to stress the body to create adaptations, essentially, is what we're after, right? So 3 times per week, a minimum of 45 minutes of each of those training sessions, paired with a little bit of conditioning on each of your training days. Secondly, a minimum of 8 to 10,000 steps per day. There is no magic in the 8 to 10,000 steps. It's not like once you hit a certain amount of steps per day, you're automatically going to unlock, the results that you're after. But what this does mean is that on a week-to-week basis, you're getting a minimum of 56,000 to 70,000 steps per day, right? Or in a weekly basis. That means you're generally an active person. You're on your feet fairly frequently throughout the day. You're moving your body. You're potentially outside, getting benefits from the sun and things of that nature. It just means that you're not sedentary. You're not just sitting on your ass doing nothing. You're not working an office job all day where you're not moving. 8 to 10,000 steps a day means you're a pretty generally active individual. This is going to promote a lot of health benefits on its own. But this also is great paired with, a minimum dosage of training each week, because even on your days off, you're still getting a high amount of, just movement throughout your day. Third thing, consuming no less than 1 gram of body weight, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, 7 days a week. I changed the 7 days per week here rather than per day and per day, because a lot of people like to think that you can get away with just maybe 6 days per week. That's not how this works. Your body is cycling through protein at an extremely fast rate because it is metabolically taxing for your body to hold on to muscle. That is why we need to ensure that we are constantly putting protein in our bodies, because it takes a little bit longer to metabolize. It's going to be harder to overeat on protein. I promise you're not going to overeat on chicken, rice, and vegetables. It doesn't have to be that plain and boring, but you get what I'm saying. If you are actively trying to pursue, your minimum protein goal each and every day, obviously you can go a little bit more than 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, but 1 gram is really what we need to be shooting for. So if you weigh 200 pounds, you need to be consuming 200 grams of protein. If you weigh 150 pounds, 150 grams of protein. If you weigh 250, I'm sorry to tell you, you got to figure out a way to get 250 grams of protein in. Now, heavier individuals like that, especially pushing the 300 mark, may not necessarily need 1 gram per pound of body weight, but you really don't want to drop below 0.8. But I don't really like to, mention that for a lot of populations, because then people are going to find the caveat and maybe try to do 0.75 or 0.7. They're like, what's this 0.1 difference going to make? It makes a huge difference in the totality of things at the end of your day, at the end of the week, and at the end of each month. If you're wondering why you're not getting the results that you want, it might be because you're trying to cut little corners like that, thinking that you're going to be okay, when really they compound. Just like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, these 4 things aren't going to guarantee results. But if you do them on not a 7-day, but if you do them on a 7-day basis, week in and week out, month to month, year to year, at some point, stuff's going to give and you're going to see the results that you really are after. It just may take a lot longer than you really think. It's not a fucking 12 or 16 week thing. It's not a 3 to 6 month thing. You might get some noticeably decent results in 3 to 6 months, but truthfully, if you want lasting and guaranteed results, it's going to take years and years. And even then, once you get to where you want to go, maintaining that's going to be even harder, because that means the work that you put in to get there is going to be the minimum threshold to keep that, right? So, as you can see, the compounding works in both ways. You can take a little bit of protein away from this thinking that you're going to be okay, but then when you add it up at the end of each month and you go, man, I'm not consuming as much protein as I really need to. That's why you're not seeing the results that you're after. And lastly, gallon of water per day. I know this is a lot for some people. Your body will get acclimated to this and you will adjust. It takes time, but at the end of the day, we are comprised of a lot of water internally, and water helps facilitate, a lot of different functions in the body. I don't even want to get into it. That's why there's a quick pause there, because I'm not going down that rabbit hole. There's a lot of things that water does within our body, and making sure that we're adequately consuming water frequently throughout the day is just going to help, with metabolism, blood flow, mental cognition, and things of that nature. And pairing this with proper electrolyte consumption as well is not only going to elevate all of those things, but is going to give us more output in our workouts. It's going to give us more energy day to day, and it's just going to improve our lives in a plethora of ways. So like I said, I'm not one to say there's any guaranteed results out there for us to grab. You got to work for it, you got to push, and you got to be consistent. But if you're going to do anything consistently and you want to invest, in the right things, put your stock in these 4 things right here, and I will guarantee that at some point in time, if you are consistent enough with this over years and years and years, you will see your guaranteed results that you're after.